Welcome. I'm a little flabbergasted, as you can tell. I was expecting 30 or 25 to 30, she said. I'm sorry that I do not have enough handouts. I would just ask maybe if you're from the same church or if you're partners, you live with someone, that you just take one so we can get as much. And then if there are people that just really would like these, write your name down on a piece of paper and I will find one and what you would like, or all of them, and we'll see that you can get them, okay? I'm going to start quickly with just my bio because I don't think I'm going to have time to tell you what I had. I love conferencing because when people get together and share ideas, because I hope that you're not here to just glean, everybody learns. And so I usually learn quite a bit just by leading. So I want there to be discussion, even though there's a room full of us. But if something comes to your mind, just jot it on out and we'll talk about it, okay? This is my 30th year of teaching children. I started as a 24-year-old, being the disciplinarian behind a colorful child. This young boy prayed for his Venus flytrap every Sunday. Just a very excited child, couldn't sit still, very much like myself growing up. And as I sat behind him and kept him focused, it took me exactly 2 weeks to realize that I wanted to be where that lady was sitting there teaching the lesson. So from that point on, the church found me a class, and I've been doing it ever since. So I love kids. I hate to tell you that I get emotional, and I'll try not to because this has been a tough day already. But I have a whole lot to share with you on discipline. We're just going to jump right into it. On the board right here is one of my favorite verses. Moses spoke this to the people, and he talked about his teaching being like drops of rain and dew on plants, tender plants. Well, we know from any kind of agriculture, you must have that to grow. So I hope that you will look at today's conference on how to grow your children. We're going to look specifically at how not to react to behavior, but to respond. And we're going to talk about a whole lot of different, keys for you to try. There's going to be a ton of stuff that you can spend hours writing down. I recommend that you choose 2 or 3 things that you think you might could try and work on it, and leave the rest of it on material that you don't. Some of them are as simple as just stop talking for 2 or 3 seconds and see what happens in your room. Lots of things are going to contribute to discipline issues. We know that the definition of discipline itself is training that develops self-control in our kids and character. And then, of course, it enforces obedience. If we can get away from the fact that we want to train children to behave and train them to love God, it's a big difference. This conference is very controversial. I have taught it several times, and I have had tomatoes thrown at me, not literally, because people are used to teaching one way, and they don't want to change, and it's comfortable, and for some, it works okay. But it generally does not work for the future. So I'm just asking that you have an open mind on how to work with a prevention side as opposed to a reaction side, and see what kinds of things might benefit you. All right, I need to look at my notes, I'm sorry. Okay, and so therefore this section up here, and you can tell I'm a visual learner. I didn't put up nearly as much as I would because I wasn't really supposed to be in this room. But I want to see if we can turn some of your trying moments into teachable moments. And if you will look on the left side, you don't have to tell me or raise your hand, but do you see a child that you teach? I have a great privilege, I keep telling myself, to teach about 689 children a week at an elementary school in the computer lab. So I see all walks of life. And over the last 13 years that I've taught there, the home lives have changed dramatically. So seeing those kids come in, it's really hard not to just want to love them to death. But I see all of that in my room every day, almost every period. And it gets worse every year. So hopefully we can look at that and say, how can we turn those kids into a focus and have them learn something. Okay? Let's go ahead. First thing we need to know, and I need to keep an eye on the time, there's no clock on here, is the child itself. Okay, and I wanted to try to pass out these, which I've lost. Here we go. I tell you, I think I'm going to try this. These are first and second grade, so I'm going to pass that first. If that applies to you, take one. These are third and fourth. Same, and this is fifth, or preteen they call. So some of you, how many of you have sixth grade in your churches? In the children's division? Oh, bless you. Sixth graders are leaders of children, and when we scoop them off into youth, frightens me. Difference between 12 years old and 18. Big, big difference. So if you'll just kind of pass these around, I'm not going to go through the sheets, but it gives you an idea of who those kids are.
Thank you.
In the back.
I know, I'm just kidding.
Some of the things that you would find with a younger child is their motor skills. Okay, we want to avoid frustration by not giving them activities that are too difficult for their fingers to do. Okay, they also like to move around a lot. So if you have a small room, that's hard. But you can use the same chair at a table that you would use at a large group session and have them bring it. Teaching quiet moving of chairs. You're always thinking, what can I teach? I hate to have my backs to me. But those little guys have such a great desire to be loved. They'll do just about anything for you. They are also ready to start gaining a little responsibility, so have them put away the supplies instead of you cleaning up. Have them put them in the center of the table, if that helps. But we need to kind of look at what the child is like so that we can know how to teach them. So I'll let you guys peruse through that. Third and fourth is my favorite. I've tried to come back to third grade every time I absolutely can. I love the Continental Divide. It starts out girls on this side, boys on this side, and about May you have them all mixed up. So there's a really specialness, I think, with third grade. Plus, I don't know about your church, but our church has a great influx of Christian salvation made during those third grade years. Not always the case. My son accepted Christ at 6, but I was positive he was ready. And then others wait till 6th grade or youth. But I like that idea of having the opportunity to teach that, because you teach it a little differently. And then 5th and 6th, very competitive if you have 5th graders. Look for ways to make something a game. Look for ways to encourage them to use their moral thinking. They're beginning to not be quite so abstract, or more abstract than the ones that are small and can't follow. So look for ways to know those kids, and it will help you figure out how to teach them. There is, Lifeway has a plan out, and I believe it's called Biblical Learning, what each child at what age can understand. I use that with all my teachers. I've used it in conferences. I've passed them out. I don't have enough for you, but it's a free download. So if you go to Lifeway and look it up, it will give you what they can understand at age 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to, I think, youth. What they understand about God, what they can comprehend about the church, about salvation, about the Bible. It's a wonderful tool to see that you don't teach too much that they can't understand. Okay? All right, so the learning styles, how many of you are familiar with Cynthia Tobias? Couple? Okay, I have her book in the back on the table if you have a chance to glean when we break up. She teaches many styles. I like to section them into 3. We have your visual learner, which learns best by looking. Your auditory learner, who needs to hear it or hear music. And then your kinesthetic learner, which in my opinion most children are. I love this. A child remembers 10% of what he hears, 50% of what he sees, 70% of what he says, and 90% of what he does. He will remember that. So kinesthetic is quite obviously most of them. We don't have, can I have that first stat? I am not sure that there's enough for these, but this is one thing I would request that you take. So I'm going to pass that as far as it goes. This is a survey for you to check off if you have a pencil and just kind of put those back. I'm really sorry. Or at least get where you can see one. To find out what kind of learner you are. Does anybody know? Oh, good. Excellent. So if you look at this sheet, the first 5 on the sheet say things like act and play, work in a jigsaw puzzle. These are things that you absolutely love to do. You would check them. And the first 5 are kinesthetic learners. The second group says listen to music, tell a story, those kinds of things. If those are things that you absolutely love to do, not that you just don't mind doing, but absolutely love, then that means you're an auditory learner. And then the bottom section talks about writing stories, painting a picture mural, doing cards, timelines. Those are all visual learning things. I do this at the beginning of every year with whatever group I'm teaching. And then I can write it at the top that this is an auditory learner or this is a kinesthetic learner. So when I'm making activities, and even in my Bible story time, I'm making it cater toward what they learn best. Most of the time we want to teach how we learn best. So if I just did visual all the time, my audio learners are under the table looking for something. It's really interesting too to see what kinds of kids they are. They will come into the room. Your auditory learner, can everybody see this? There's some sheets up here too that you can take with you so you know what kind of activities to do. But these are the kinds of things that an auditory learner would do. Okay, I'll read them out. They love music. They love to talk. They come in telling you what your day is going to be like, or what theirs has just been like, or what mom did in the car you're not going to believe. Remember instructions. You can say, find a Mark 10:35, the shortest verse in the Bible, and they will be there in 2 seconds. Your visual learner needs what? They need for you to write Mark 10:35 on a card, put it on the floor where they can look at it so that you don't hear, what was that? What chapter? What verse were we in? It's right there, and you take up 10 seconds writing it, and you're right at 10:35 immediately. So, but these guys are really harder to teach, believe it or not, but there's fewer of them. If you did your class, you'll find maybe only 12% are auditory learners. Loves stories and monologues, and he'll tell you that he's happy or sad. Your kinesthetic learner loves drama, loves projects, so if you ever have things that you can drag out for several hours, they're the ones that are going to lead that pack. They physically love to be enthusiastic, okay, so they're moving all the time. My little Jimmy was the Venus flytrap. He was a kinesthetic learner because he had to be moving, he had to be showing and doing for him to understand anything. Puzzles, games, very excitable and cannot sit still. It's okay. Children don't sit still, do they? Work it into your lesson. You can have stand up, sit down, memory verse times. Move them around. I have my kids turn around backwards and say things that they're supposed to remember without being able to see it. But it, moves them around a little bit. Of course, my favorite visual learners love pictures. They love to do art. Okay, anything they can see to work on. Prefer written instructions so that they know what you're talking about. When you give out a sheet, make sure there's some instructions on there. It don't have to be long, just a couple words. Very observant. They will tell you that poster has been up for 3 months. When are you taking it down? And we get into that habit, don't we? We like something, we keep it going and going. Change up things, okay? If you come to my second conference, we're going to talk about Bible learning stations and how that changes every month. And it excites the kids and gets them wanting to come back. Loves maps and timelines. We don't do that anymore. Very rarely do you see that kind of thing. And they will redecorate your ring for you, so you don't have to. You can tell them, next week we're doing this, and these are some things I'd like to use, and let them go to town. So it's fun. So knowing their learning styles. Their backgrounds are also very important. Some of the ways that we have found that people misbehave, including children, because they're kids. Okay, they want to figure out what they can and cannot do. I'm taking this from Greg Bayard, who is a writer for Children's Ministry Magazine. Excellent resource. Not all of it's perfect, but lots of good information if you've ever seen that magazine. Number two, because they have not received good, clear guidelines. Set boundaries in your room. Help them help you make rules for your classroom. They know them. They're more apt to follow them. Okay? For the visual learner, what do you need to do for those rules? Post them up. Okay? And for the auditory learner, and for everybody, you mention it frequently. Because they are bored. Raise your hand if you know a bored child. I promise you they've been on video games way too much. They have no idea how to use their imagination. So if you've got those children that just need constant bombardment, you understand that, and you look to make those things a little bit different. The last one that Greg talks about is very, very interesting. He calls them all H's, and it's outside issues. He says hunger. We don't think about that much. We have children that come to our classes who have not had breakfast. The second one was health. Parents often drop their kids off that should be home in bed. And that happens in the school system. I know it does at church. So they're not feeling well. It's not that they want to misbehave. They don't feel good. I'm a bear and I don't feel good. So we got to try to remember that. Their home life, and sometimes they're just dealing with incredible things. Things we don't even like to talk about. But we got to remember that what they're coming from. And the last thing is helplessness. They just don't know how to deal with what's going on with their body. I know several kids in our school are autistic. Precious kids. They don't understand what's going on. They want you to help them, but then they want to push you away. So if you can kind of think about the kids, it will help you get to that discipline area. And of course, relationship building is very important, because if the kid thinks you love them, they're apt to listen to you. How many of you are Sunday school teachers? Good. VBS teachers? Any of the mission groups? Okay, some of you may have children more than once a week if you're actively teaching a lot. I especially tell my Sunday school teachers, please send snail mail. You know, a lot of kids still would love to get something in the mail from you. Talk to them. I've even had teachers tell me that they've gone to sporting events and sat and watched one. What a difference. I saw you at my game. You know, just that connection, that relationship will help a great deal. Okay, let's jump into the meat of it. We have two forms. Oh, no, sorry, Greg. Did that go backwards? There we go. There are two forms of discipline, I will call it. One is the generic age tried and true bribery system. Okay? Whether it's you get a piece of gum for learning a verse, or if you sit still, you'll get to pick your favorite book. Lots of things we do like that, which is the traditional. And I love this quote. Thy word have I hid in my heart, that I might get a star on my card. Okay? Nothing about why we're learning the verse, but doing it for that very reason. Elmer Towns wrote an article about the group of Awanas where you had to learn, I guess it was 600 verses before the complete thing was done. You got to go to camp free. And he talked about that scenario. How many students that successfully does that, or even half of that, can remember any of them when they're 15? You know, what was the purpose for learning that verse? Well, it was to get the check mark, okay? Charts are difficult because they create competition. In the church setting, we don't want to compete kids against each other. In our church, I have children who can only come every other week because they live with mom and then dad. So dad doesn't go to church, so they don't go to church. And when you take them to a situation where they have to decide, you know, I'm not going to be here the whole month anyway, I may as well not try. So if we can take that attention off of why we're teaching and change it to because it's the right thing to do, because God loves you so much and He would like for you to love Him back, and what blessings there are there's almost a bribe, isn't it? But it's a truthful from the scripture. Blessed are they that receive. So, we'll skip on. So what do bribes really teach? One of the things that I think we forget, and I've just kind of written down 4, I'm not going to stay too much on these, but one of the things that bribes teach is to do something to get something. Right? That's their sole purpose. And as you think about it, eventually what's going to happen? Are they going to get tired of the going? Yes, ma'am.
We had a really, really, really bright kid in our VBS last year. And he was just aloof to all the, he's not going to dance. Not because he was defiant, it was beneath him. And truly, that's how bright he was. So we didn't make him do it. And you know, he just is aloof. He's not going to do that silly stuff. He gets it all. He's just not going to be waving his arms. And we didn't make him, you know. But you've got to explain that to the other kids somehow.
Right.
Okay, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's a scenario that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was just telling Steve earlier, I am now privileged to be at the church who the pastor is the husband of one of my 3rd grade students at another church. To see the full circle, and she was very much like that. In fact, she actually came into class somewhat bored during the lessons, and I told her, I said, I think you're ready to teach my lesson next week, if you would like to do that. Her eyes got as big as Mars. Are you serious? And I said, absolutely. You come prepared, and we'll talk about it. And she came the next week, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was the story of Ruth. And she did a wonderful job. She walked in, she said, you told me I could teach. And I said, I remember that. I said, are you ready? I said, do you have the scriptures and everything in line? I do, she said. She sat right next to me, and she did a marvelous job. A little long than it should have been, because, look over here please, one of the best nuggets I ever learned in a conference I attended. A child's attention span is equal to 1 minute per his age. How many of you are over 50? When the pastor goes a little long, are you ready to get up? Well, when you're teaching 5-year-olds and the 6-year-olds, the 1st graders, every 6 or 7 minutes, you ought to move what you're doing. Doesn't mean you have to stop teaching the lesson, but choose a path that's a little different. Review something, or do a game, or stop and do a Bible skills. For Bible schools, same thing. And you're in the middle of a craft. If it's going too long, you're going to lose them. So break them up and move from space to space. But she had a problem with that, because I think her lesson was 22 minutes long. And they were 3rd graders. So, but yeah, that happens all the time. You've just got to figure out how to harness energy and move it directly. Okay? Every time that they try to get the it, they're going to expect the it to grow bigger. Until you are promising things that you cannot produce from the Dollar Tree anymore. So be careful with bribes and how you do them, because they're going to come back to hurt you, because they're not learning it. They're just wanting whatever you're promising. Madeline Swift is the blue book back there, and I was recently, well not recently, I'm sorry, it's been 5-6 years. Thank you. I got to meet her. That book is fairly old, but she was still teaching on it. And I think it's on like middle of the 1st or 2nd chapter. She talks about the fact that mothers cook dinner not to get payment. Dads go to work. They get, a salary, but they don't wash the car for money. My children empty the trash cans not for money, but it's a corporate. We do this because it's right. We do this because we're expected to contribute and make it better. So all of that pushes bribes backwards and brings forth the reason we do things. So I really like that first problem with why. Yes.
I'm a preschool teacher at our church.
Praise the Lord for you.
One of the things that I've also noticed with bribery that you have to be careful for are 2 things. One, when the other children are sitting there and they see that misbehavior is, well, if you sit still for this lesson, you can get a sticker. Well, now the whole class is going to misbehave because they want a sticker. Or the opposite's going to happen, and they're going to be like, well, why didn't I get one? That's not fair, and I was being good. So we try to just not do any kind of reward system that way, we try to reward the entire class.
Right. Excellent. And the same thing goes with the snail mail. If you're sending a letter to a child who hasn't been there for a while, when they come back, they're going to be talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
What about that child who's come every week? She never got a letter from you. So, you know, it's a lot, I'm telling you guys, to think about. And that's why I really say just pull out one or two things that look possible and try it and see if it's a difference. And if it's a good thing, then add something. But yeah, we bombard ourselves with negativity teaching, and then we wonder why it's going so bad. But it's really how we think about it. The second one, external motivation at the expense of internal motivation. And that's basically that cartoon, because we're not thinking about the future. You know, we're not trying to change the heart, we're trying to change the attitude or the behavior. If you do bribes, you're teaching it, it's your job to motivate the child instead of teaching them how to do it themselves. So you need to think about ways to tell them, we learn our verses because it's going to help us in life when we get in a fight with our brother. You know, you're going to remember that. Your child, a friend of yours at school may have lost their dog. You might remember a verse that you put in your brain and it fell into your heart that you can share with them and help them get through a tough time. Internal motivators are feeling good for a well job. Okay, we don't teach that much. Okay, be proud of the things that you accomplish or accomplishing something, anything. Make learning interesting and purposeful, and yes, make it fun for those bored children, and you'll actually see a self-esteem rise. I have a lot of kids in my class who are shy, and simply because they don't like themselves. And I'm afraid it's because mom and dad don't like them either. And it just hurts. But if you can help them understand, look what you accomplished. Don't tell them that that is the best tree that you have ever seen drawn, because it's not. Tell them you used the perfect color green for that tree. I have seen trees that look like that. But, you know, share with them something that, oh, wow, without being fake or fast.
And one trouble that is, you know, it's been a lot is like kids, they don't like paying attention. And one example I use is my son when he's playing PlayStation. He does things that barely any of us can do in the PlayStation or the tablet, whatever. But when it's time to learn, they are like right away, I can't do it, you know? So I was talking to him the other day, and I was explaining him that when it's time, that he's a kid, and he gets time to play, and he gets time to do stuff like he likes. But once he's at school, or in church, or, you know, we're just like praying at home, like he has to, I mean, it's like time for everybody, like daddy has to go to work, and even though we don't really like it, we don't enjoy it, it's something that we must do, you know, and so he's 6, he kind of get it, but you know, it's something that we having trouble like a lot, like school and everybody, anywhere, because even if it's just like for learning from school, and kids are right away, I can't do it, I can't, and they don't even try, they don't pay attention to. So what can be good for, you know, what can you
Well,
tell
who
them?
knew that we were going to have to teach children to use their imagination to begin with? How many of you grew up, that was all we had? Who knew that we were going to have to teach children how to use their brain to make a problem solved?
Right.
I see it every day. I tell them to write a story about a tree, whatever, and I don't know what to do. I said, well, have you ever seen a tree?
In one of your games, maybe?
Well,
Yeah.
well, what color is a tree? Well, green, but it could be red, and sometimes it's brown. I mean, you know, they're fighting you every bit. But once you begin to teach them what they do know and how to find it and retrieve it, you can, you know, channel it back. But the problem is the video games, because they don't have to think about anything. And they're used to that now, so when it's time to learn, they really don't know how anymore. And so it's really difficult, it is. But channel it by breaking things down simply. If they're an auditory learner, it's great.
One thing I do is like I do homework with him, and he has to read a book every night and then write a sentence or whatever. So I talk about the book with him and give him ideas. I know I do this with my son, but we can do that when we're doing classes. Like you said, you talk about the tree. We teach, we're learning something of a book, of a story, a Bible story. Mm-hmm. We have to tell them, describe the
little bits at a time.
Mm-hmm. So they know what to do with this story or whatever we are learning.
And they really can do it. It's not that they can't. My son, even now at Virginia Tech, is struggling, and he is valedictorian of his high school, but he has never had to study. It's just easy for him. But now it's a whole new ball game, and going to class, that's really why you're there. But it's really hard. Specifically, small pieces, can help. Building that self-esteem is another thing, because a video game does not build any self-esteem. Generally, you lose because the game is made for you to lose. So that is an issue. The next one is prevents children from developing evaluation, of themselves. And that really brings me into choice making. If you have never tried choice making in the classroom, I suggest you try that. Even simply having a red table and a blue table when it's time for activities. You don't have to tell them what it is. They can get through an activity that they may not particularly like, but they have made a choice and they owned it. So once they're there, this is the red table, this is where you wanted to go. Maybe because Johnny was going too. But those choice making, they're going to make choices every single day of their lives. They already are. And the most important choice is not what college they go to, or what job, or what person they're going to marry. The most important decision they will ever make is Joshua 24:15. You know it, say it with me. Choose for you this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's the choice that we want these children to learn how to make. If they're not making choices all along in life, they're going to be following whatever their mom or their friend, which is scary, has chosen. So that developing that good evaluation and that choice. They need to ask this question. We need to teach them how. What should I do, and what consequences will follow? And they should know the consequences because we put them on the wall, we talk about them from time to time, and we add in things that come up. So, very good. This also builds self-esteem, which is what we need to do. I have a sheet over here too for handouts that's how to choose different choices in the classroom, what you can do. There's all simple things. Don't have to make harsh choices, but just learning how to choose will get you a step ahead. And the last one is teaches immediate gratification. Okay, this is the most dangerous, I believe. Teaching them, I want it now, and I don't want to wait on it. How many of you heard that old saying, teach me patience, Lord, but I need it right now? Some having some issues right here. If you want patience from God, He's going to give you some trying, difficult situations. Because you'll learn your patience. But I think this is the most dangerous because it reminds us of what we have today, the me society. It's a scary place to be. It's only getting worse. So if we can remove that immediate and work more on the delayed gratification, that's what develops the maturity in a child, having to wait. Yeah.
Sometimes, in fact, I've done this at work. I'll say, it's not all about me, it's all about him. And I'll say that to the kids. We have this big wooden cross in our church right over the baptistry, and I'll say, who's it all about? And they'll say, Jesus. And it's like, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's all about him. What does he want? And they're like, oh.
And we do tend to make church about us. How did my lesson go? Did the game go well? What things are the children learning? And you really are the instrument of the Bible. I was fortunate to go to Mexico with a very small singing team, but one of our jobs was to do VBS. And we were asked to bring a suitcase for our clothes and a suitcase full of school supplies because they had nothing. We were just assisting. We didn't really go down there to actually teach. We were helping the teachers. They had nothing. They had a black and white copy of a cartoon-like picture of the Bible story and a Bible. Boy, Lifeway gives us tons of stuff to teach with. But you really only need that word. And if that word is like in a needle and is sewn through every craft, every refreshment, every outside, everything, story, everything, then it's a successful day. If we can point children to Christ and His Word, the rest of it doesn't matter. But I learned so much from them on not having so much stuff and just really teaching the Bible story and how it affects them. A lot of times we don't leave enough time for the application part, but that's where they really learn. Oh, that makes sense. I do feel like Paul today. You know, so that's when reviews can come in and you can get up and move around and do some things. So, all right, let's sleep them. The better, in my opinion, part of discipline is the prevention side. And you just need to ask yourself, what does Scripture teach about that? One of my favorite verses, too, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be as well. And that applies to all forms of your life. You know, what is most important to you? That's what you're going to become. If Christ is the center of your life, your marriage will be better. If Christ is the center of your life, your education will be better. If you're doing it for Him, everything vertical is right, horizontal gets better. So that is very important. What I would like to do, oh, actually, if you don't mind, I've got a few seconds, I think. Oh, which is great. I would like to read some of this book. It's very, very, very short. A friend of mine, Martha Kelly from Roanoke, actually took my class on this, and she had already written this, so she was one of my cheerleaders in the room. But she could not get this published because the Christian publication people said that it didn't have enough scripture. It wasn't to the point enough. She tried to get it secularly published, and they said it's got too much moral. We don't want it. It's a children's book. You know, what are you doing? It's called Just Because It's Right, and it really hits home. Each day, all of the people of Kalamazoo got lovely rewards for the things they do. They get prizes for smiling and sitting and blinking. They get candy for walking and eating and thinking. There were prizes, I'm told, for people who cough, and workers got treats when they took the day off. The toilets had tokens and candy for flushing, and prizes were given for laughing and blushing. Bright stickers you'd earn just for combing your hair, and candy was chose for the clothes that you would wear. The children got points for the gum that they would chew and a check on a chart for tying a shoe. The toddlers were taught by the time they were 3 to ask life's big question, what's in it for me? The people of Kalamazoo had it good, rewarding for doing things that they should. Rewarded for this, rewarded for that, rewarded for this. The prizes kept coming, they did not miss. Then one afternoon, out of the blue, all of the Department of Prizes in Kalamazoo said there are no more stuff in our coffers to give. You'll have to discover a new way to live. They were panicked. The town was in a zoo. Without the prizes, what are we going to do? They stopped driving cars. They stopped eating their meals. They sometimes went shopping and didn't pay any bills. It seemed that the town was about to explode in one of the prizes they felt they were owed. The leader said, we need to talk this out, but what will you give us if we do? One little girl, who was not quite like the rest, suggested a rather unusual request. I said, have you thought that it might be okay just to do what you do as you go through the day? There's no need to be paid or become all uptight. Go do what you should just because it's right. Be grateful you can do it and be glad you exist. So people stop griping about the treats they miss. Now all the people smile in Kalamazoo, and they do the rest of the things that they do without wanting stickers or good things to eat, because it's the right thing to do. Isn't that neat? I just think that is adorable. Teaching a child, you don't always have to do something for something. You know, they have things that they need to do just because they need to do them. So let's take a look at what Scripture says about teaching. If we could, how many of you have a Bible with you? You? Okay, I'm going to ask you guys to kind of turn around and check this out. If you have a Bible, you can look it up. I've also written the scripture out, and we're going to talk about that scripture in just a minute. And you guys over here, will somebody just read it and talk about the passage in John? I'll give you guys right here, this one, if you guys will turn around and kind of talk about that. And wherever you can get in, if somebody will read through that scripture and talk about that. And then I have John, if you guys right through here, and if you guys want to stand around and listen,
It's right here, so.
or I will go ahead and give you guys this
Oh, interesting.
to kind of look at and talk about.
This came up in my prayer last night.
And I will give you about 2 or 3 minutes to just kind of look at that
Matthew
verse
20,
and think about what it means.
Does everybody want to look at this? Should I pass this around?
Do you want me to read it? And I actually think I might have
The
enough
scripture is Matthew 21, verse
Do
16.
not love the world or the things in the world.
Should I read it?
Anyone
She's
loves
reading
the world,
verse.
the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the
I'll
desires
read
of
it
the
for
flesh,
everybody
the
here.
desires of the
Okay,
eyes,
Matthew
and the pride of
21,
life,
verse 16.
not from the Father,
Out
but
of the
is
New
from
American Standard. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. When he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius for the day, he sent them into his vineyard. And he went out about the third hour and saw others standing out on the marketplace, and to those he said, "You also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right I will give you." And so they went. Again, he went out about the 6th and the 9th and did the same thing. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing there, and he said to them, "Why have you been standing here idle all day long?" They said to him, "Because no one hired us." He said to them, "You go into the vineyard too." When the evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman,
And also,
"Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last group up to the first." When those hired about the 11th hour came, each received a denarius.
or whatever, but
When those hired first came, they thought that they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they grumbled at the landowner, saying, "These last men have worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden and the scorching heat of the day." But he answered and said to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go, but I wish to give to this last man the same as you. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish to do with what is my own? Or is your eye envious because I am generous?" So the last shall be first, and the first last.
My
So we're
good
supposed
friend
to
Lisa
discuss
is
this or what?
passing out a couple of other sheets that we'll need in a little bit. I think there should be enough for everybody.
Oh, what are we supposed to do? I've read it, but
The first yellow sheet that's coming around is the activities that you could try for different learning styles. So if you have never taught an auditory lesson, you can pull something off of that and try it. And the second yellow sheet is what you came for, hints on how to discipline. So we're getting to that. Good five. All right, let's go ahead and discuss the sheet, the white sheet, if you want to just jot some information down about that scripture. It would be best for you to study that scripture and see what God would have you do, talking through you about that scripture. But I chose 5 scriptures that I think Scripture teaches us how to prevent instead of reacting to discipline issues. Who has John 14:15? Okay, can you give us an idea of what that scripture is about? Anybody like to be a spoken person?
Well, it says, if you love me, keep my commands. And he has 10 commandments that we are to follow every day. And I don't know about, these ladies will tell me they also teach preschool weekly. You know, we're not just, Sunday school teachers. And one of the things that I know I do in my class is every month the children learn a scripture or learn a command. And we incorporate our lesson into teaching them what that command is about. And I tell them, why it's important to love him and to follow those, because if we're gonna listen to our parents, we do it because we love them. And I explained to them that, Jesus, gave his life for us, and would it not be fair for them to learn how to say thank you?
Absolutely, yeah. As they grow into different stages until adulthood, there are rules that they must follow. On the traffic streets, they have to follow rules. In their jobs, in school, every single step that they take, they do need to follow rules, and that's what the Ten Commandments are. What a person that was studying this verse came up with, which I really love, is that because of that verse, love is the proper motivation for discipline, teaching them to love God. I used to ask this question a lot, and some people would look at me really funny, and they'd say, I don't know if I agree with that. I'll see what you say. Do you think it's more important to love God or obey him? You don't have to answer it. Just answer it right here. And I'll tell you what I believe. I believe that it's more important to obey him. Because how many of you little kids love your moms and dads and their dads? How many of you obey them all the time? How many of you would obey your mom if she asked you to do something and you could do it? Yeah. Is that showing that you love them? Yeah. So I'm really in favor of teaching that love God, but obey him first. Because you're going to. The other way, you do not always. So this love motivation, we should never ask for obedience without asking for love first. Yes. But that obedience is very, very important. All children desire to be loved. What better reward than the affection of God of the universe? He's not just out there. He's in charge of everything. He is the biggest and the best. And he wants you to have a relationship with him. And that's what we need to teach. Good points, thanks. Matthew 6, 1 through 8. Okay. What's the verses about?
Well, there's quite a few verses in here, but it's talking about, in a sense, we must be humble. And what we do, we don't do it as showing righteousness before others, and in our preaching or our teaching, whatever you do. In other words, if you give to someone because they're needy, do not let the left hand know what the right hand's doing. Do not do it to brag.
Right. So we're not doing things for the eyes of others. Okay, and that's a difficult thing for children to understand, because peers are very important. Their parents' love is very important. But directing that, do it for him, everything else will fall into place. So yes, the stolen reward is what they call that. Teach the children that obedience is an act of worship. Okay, we obey and we follow the rules and we do what's right because it shows that we worship God. Matthew 20.
This one's about the kingdom of heaven and the laborers, and they hire the laborers early in the day, then late in the day. And what this is about, obviously, is, suppose that this lady gets saved when she's 5 years old and she lives till she's 60, and I get saved tomorrow and I die 2 days from now. We're going to the same heaven, okay? And we may well get the same reward. And it's not up to us, it's about what the Lord has decided, because he alone guides our steps. No. Y'all can disagree.
And it's difficult for children not to expect the other.
Yes.
Right?
It's
Everything
difficult
has
to
be
adults.
Fair. If it's not fair,
Right,
it's not right.
fair. That's right.
So, right. Yeah, the child with fewer stars shouldn't feel like a lesser Christian. So that goes back to the competition.
Or better clothes, or...
Well, right. Absolutely. Okay, and Matthew 25, 34 through 46. It was about?
I don't know, mercy.
Okay, yeah. When you do one of these to the least of...
Yeah, it's a verse about we are hungry, give us something to eat, thirsty, and just gathered from it, being merciful, because we're not deserving of any of it.
Right. So, and that should be their thinking as well. one of the things that I thought was really important, they talked about that God rewards character and not ability.
Yes, that's right.
And when I was first asked by the Virginia Baptist Mission Board to start teaching some conferences, I told my boss, I said, oh, well, I just don't really feel like I'm equipped to do that. I'm just a teacher. And she told me something I've never forgotten. She said, God doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And I know she didn't make that up, I'm sure, because people have heard it all the time. But it really made a difference in my life, so that now a lot of times my first thought is, I'm called to be faithful. I'm not called to teach children's conferences. I'm called to be faithful.
That's right.
So whatever happens in that realm, I feel like that's my connection with not my ability, but what I feel like God is rewarding for my character. So those with a heart for service to others is the goal that children ought to search for. We do this because we care about the rest of the class. A community talking about how to get along in the classroom. When we choose to do something that hurts the class, that puts us back.
I believe that we as teachers and instructors and as parents of these children, we have to feel those same things ourselves.
True.
Because
Excellent.
sometimes we think more highly of ourselves than we are.
Yeah. Because it's easy to do.
Right.
The world's expecting us to do that.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't look like Barbie and I never will. So, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Our last one, 1 John 2, was about
Looking to things of not of the world, but to things of heaven, looking up instead of looking at all your stuff and being worried about your worldly possessions, looking to the Father.
yes, right. And we were just talking about that with Lisa. God's given me everything I need. I certainly don't have the things I want right now with 2 kids in college. But I can't really complain about that when He meets needs amazingly. Things will come up that we need, and presto, they show up on our doorstep. No reason for it other than He is watching out. So yeah, that's a very difficult thing for children to understand too, because they want to put their emphasis on that treasure box that we've created instead. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a status. There's a status. And I don't mean a status symbol, I mean like a status quo. For example, I'm a single woman and I don't feel any obligation to be married. I thought I would, but there's a lot of people in the world who judge me and say very unkind things.
But it's okay.
Right, it's okay, but this is the life that God is giving me. But it's hard because I'm shunned in some cases. So, it's hard.
All right, let's look at this sheet. If you all got one, I hope you did. I kind of took a synopsis of things that I have gleaned from studying this type of information. These are some tried and true things that I have actually done and have worked well. So we'll just kind of run through them quickly.
Which one are we going through?
Discipline, what works? It's yellow.
Yes, 4. And then, I'm out of fingers. This is awesome.
Okay, yeah. You can just leave these under your seat. I always like to take this back. And we're not going to get to the bees or the children's things. The first one, arrive early and be prepared. Have you heard that the first person in the room is in charge? Unfortunately, at my church, I teach a lot of teachers' kids. So guess what? Sometimes I get there and I have kids in my room, and they are already in charge. You can't possibly get there earlier sometimes, but yes, practice getting there as early as you can and be ready, okay? And when it says be prepared, I would say be over-prepared. I never use all of the stuff that I bring. I don't do that here. I don't do that anywhere because I'm a nervous ninny. I have to make sure I've got plenty to get through. But pick and choose. If something's going really badly, you don't have to finish it. Get rid of it and go on to something else. And that has happened to me quite a lot. So I expect something that does not happen. Set ground rules and establish those behaviors right up front, okay? Your parents probably did it with you, okay? You didn't grow up thinking, I can get away with that, because you already know that's the wrong thing to do. So be consistent. If you're wishy-washy on the rule, and we talked about that earlier, well, I didn't get that. You need to make sure that you're consistent around. That is being fair, to be consistent with every child, okay? Respect the child as a person. They are just little adults. Okay, sometimes I find that I want to treat a child differently than I would treat an adult. I want to belittle them in the form of teaching. We need to respect them. They are people, and we need to make sure that we are teaching them that way in respect. Know your children. We talked about that. Teach multiple learning styles. If you've never tried it, add one to what you're doing. And you'll be surprised at the continuity of the class when you've touched more than one. The other yellow sheet shows you that you can do an activity that reaches 2 different learning styles at the same time. So that's something you might want to try. Vary your voice. If it's really loud in your classroom because the kids are talking, they will get those eyes on your body faster than you can imagine, or stop talking altogether. I do that at school a lot. I just wait. My favorite line, which the kids will tell you, is, "It's rude to talk when someone else is, so I'll wait till you're done." That wasn't mean. I wasn't harsh. But I got my point across, and in about 15 seconds, they were ready to listen again. So, and that keeps me from saying, "Bobby, you're being rude." Don't belittle them. And certainly I haul them though, with a smile on your face. Move around while you teach. It was impossible for me to do that today. Normally I do. I walk up and say, "Jewel, what do you think about this?" You know, and I call their names out, and we move around a lot. So you might try that if you have room to do that. Provide variety and choice. We talked a little bit about that, but don't always do your lesson the same way. Now, you've got 5 lessons coming up in Bible school. You want to teach all 5 of them differently. There are 52 weeks in a year. There are 52 different ways you can teach a lesson. If you don't believe me, go online and find them. You can use puppets. You can do monologues. You can have the children picture pose. All kinds of ways to make it a variety of ways to learn. Be flexible. Oh, one thing I do, I heard this a long time ago, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. But if your child is doing something wrong, give them 2 choices that are right. For instance, if they're running in the hall, "Johnny, you can skip or you can walk." And you have not said, "Johnny, stop running. Johnny, we don't run in church." You have given them 2 options. You've given them a choice. Both are good. And we move along. I don't know if it really works or not. I haven't really been able to try it that much. But it's just a thought.
There's another choice.
What's
Do what they do.
Oh!
Do what they do.
Start running?
No, you know, everything is electronic, cell phone, cell phone. Last week I was just so disgusted with saying, "Put your cell phones up, put them in this box." He was with me, and I was like, "What can I do?"
I took them.
The next week, guess what? When they came in, found the game and I was doing it. And I sat there, they was like, "Miss Cecilia, we ready."
I'm not.
"Miss Cecilia, we ready."
2 more points.
And I would look up. All of a sudden, everybody got quiet. They were like, "You not ready?" I was like, "This is what you always do." Then I had 2 girls that I take home every week. I told me, I said, "I'm going to stay here till the church closes down." I just kept doing it. They said, "Miss Cecilia, we ready to go home?" "We ready to go home." And I looked up, they were looking so pitiful. They were looking so pitiful. I said, "Are y'all ready to go home yet?" They said, "Yes, ma'am." And when I got to the house, they never say thank you. That Wednesday night, they said, "Thank you, Mr. Sue. We'll see you Sunday."
Take a picture. I think they'll get it for sure.
Yeah.
Any kind of learner. Excellent. The next few, listen to the child. Don't just hear it. Really hear what they're saying. They're probably telling you something about themselves without being specific. Respond to their needs, not their actions. You know, why are they doing that? Think if you can figure that out first and direct them in a different area, you'll get a better response. Involve the students in teaching. My little Rebecca, she's amazing. She's now a pastor's wife. No joke there. But find ways to bring them into doing what you're doing. Teach Christ-like living. There's a saying that says children are great imitators, so give them something to imitate. If you're doing the right things and they love you, which they're going to love you if you love them, they'll listen, then they'll want to imitate what you're doing. And you explain why you do it. I don't talk because it's rude when you're talking.
I got one that imitates, and I was singing, the whole class stopped. Said, Mr. Bob, you sound like a foghorn. I says, huh? You want me to sing? No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Please don't sing, Mr. Bobby.
Oh, funny. That's cute. Model desired behavior, and then the most important thing is pray. If you don't hear anything I've said today, please read this out loud. Can you see it? Let's say it together. Christ's soldiers fight better on their knees. What does it say again? Christ's soldiers fight better on their knees. Pray.
Amen.
If you can't do anything else, you can pray.
Yes.
And it'll work. I promise.
I had a question about punishments specifically. Like, what if you're teaching a younger age group, like let's say the 3 and 4-year-olds, and you know at that age they don't want to share, they're fighting, they're like pinching each other and kicking each other. Like, what is a good actual punishment for them? Because biting is not acceptable, but you know, you don't want to kick them back downstairs so they disrupted the service, but like what's a good punishment so that they know this is not acceptable behavior? And like, what do you do as far as like on a punishment side, or for older kids when it's like verbal altercations, or sometimes it comes down to physical altercations? Like, what type of measurements would you use for like actual punishment?
Hard question, because I am really not in favor of time out. I know that's the big way to do it, but these steps of action, which I knew we weren't going to get to, but I will read them. It starts with the worker sits with the child. That's the first thing that should happen. If you have a situation that's out of control. A worker, and please, 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 if you are teaching alone, get your pastor involved. You must have someone with you in your room, not only for insurance reasons, but just to help keep a continuity of your class. Even when you have just 2 or 3 children, it is better to split the kids up for activities so that one teacher has one thing and one has another. Everything's better about it. But one worker should go sit with that child. Use firm but unharsh tone with the children. Tell them what is not correct. You're not announcing it to the class. You are sitting one-on-one with that child. Remember to deal with the behavior, not the child. It's not that you are being bad. Your choice of activity is wrong. You have not stifled their self-esteem. Okay? The next step says, address the positive, allow for questions and answer. What would happen if you chose this? What result would we find? Now, it's hard to do that to a 3-year-old, which I'm not good at, and I will tell you that right. That's why I bless you, sister. If they can't even pick up a book and show me a word or two, I don't know what to do with them. I did okay with my toddlers.
Well, 2 things that we incorporated that we've learned from other, because we're required training hours. The first thing we do is if there's 2 children fighting over a toy, we don't put the children in timeout, we put the toy in timeout. And that teaches them.
Check, I learned another thing
If
today.
you're going up the slide and you've asked the children to go down the slide is now off limits, it's in timeout because it wasn't used properly. The other thing that we do is we do not discipline, we don't treat bad behavior. we try to turn it around, and we have, what we do is instead of timeout, they take a break. They get a book, they get a stuffed animal or something, they have to go sit down for a few minutes just to calm down. Then we come and we talk about the behavior and we pray about it.
Or
So-
take a prayer walk.
And that's, well, we can't really leave the room, you know, because I'm the only teacher with 10 kids. And, you know, so they're learning that, well, I didn't get in trouble, but now that I've learned about Jesus and his commandments and following them, I just broke one of those. Oh, that was not a good idea. So that helps turn their behavior
One
around.
thing we do too is we point out, like, if they made a friend sad, like by hitting or biting or something, is look how sad your friend
Yes.
is. How does that make you feel? How would Jesus want you to fix that? What do you think you should do? And that kind of puts the ball back in their court too.
And bring him back in constantly.
What does Jesus
That's
say?
why we're here. I love the WWE. I mean, I don't know why it disappeared. Because it's functional for adults. In a situation, what's the first thing you think to do? Well, I need to pray about this. What would you have me do, Lord?
Well, and if you have more than one child that the behavior is out of control, then probably the class is getting full.
Right.
And it's
It's
kind of like
time to
switch.
switch to a new one. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm just going to share, especially with older age children, since this is a ministry, you know what I mean? It's not like we're in a public school setting. This is a ministry. And when you have a child that is acting out, misbehaving, whatever, however way, we do have a tendency to want to stop the behavior instead of getting to the heart of the matter. And so opportunity is there to find out, because a lot of times I've experienced where, especially with an older age child, there's things going on in their life.
Right.
They're carrying a lot of stuff on their shoulders. Emotionally, they're going through some stuff. Parents' divorce, financial crisis, whatever, health issues going on. And so children will carry that and then they'll act out, because of what's going on in their personal life.
And
so
you can be the advocate.
right? Because what will happen is when you really get to know that student and get to understand maybe what's going on in their life, you can better minister to them. You know what I mean? When you are aware of that, versus just trying to stop the behavior. It's a part, you can minister better once you find out what's causing this behavior, what's going on. In some cases with little children, you gotta stop the behavior quickly for safety reasons, but in other words, you could follow up, for ministry purposes. So that's true.
Excellent. Good. Okay, some words of wisdom for you. There are 3 sheets that I hope you got back here about the ABCs, the 10 helps. But remember this, you've got to have these things. You've got to work and be patient. It's not going to happen tomorrow. The wisdom of Solomon, you're going to have some interesting situations come up. You've got to decide what is the best scenario and is it feasible. Go to plan B if it's not. And the battle strategy of Joshua. That's what we're teaching tomorrow. I'm so excited. I love that story. But he does the work. He's the winner of the battle. So rely on him. Okay? One more, please, Lisa. And I'll leave you with this. Discipline is defined as teaching, training, learning. So disciple them. Let's get away from disciplining and disciple them to be Christ-like.